Like all middle-class kids, you're brought up in a world that you think is good and fair and sensible. And, and it's going to be a breeze. And then one day, you realise that it's not like that. You think you're great, you think everything's going fine, you think you rule the world, and suddenly, bang! You push a virtue, material prosperity, to an extreme. You pushed it so extreme that the virtue is turned into the mother of all vices. So it's the greatest morality tale of all time. I wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and before I'm conscious of myself, I've got this great idea. So is that my idea? Well, not really, because I wasn't aware of it. And do you do that? You wake up in the morning and your brain's already on the go before you realise your brain's on the go. Do you see what I mean? And then you wake up and then have internal conversation, which goes a bit like, that was a really scary crap idea, I'm not going to do that. And then another part of me goes, yeah, you know you're going to do it. We've gone into this dream, druggy world of fossil fuel consumerism, right? And we don't know what's up or down anymore. We've lost our bearings. There's this thing, the climate crisis. But like everyone else, right, we're just going, yeah, I'm going to deal with that at some point. That's on the agenda, but not today. Most people aren't aware of the sky. For me, it's an object of stress. And at worst, it's an object of terror. I'm thinking, that's whether I make any money. That's whether I've got a livelihood. And I know that it's totally brutal. So I had this big business, had employed about 20, 30 people, the biggest box scheme in Wales, delivering veg to loads of people. And then 2006, 2nd of June, it started raining for 7 weeks, every day. And it was like a sort of supernatural event. Not a single outdoor vegetable survived. They all rotted and were eaten by slugs, and the tractors disappeared in the mud, and I was just out of my head with stress and guilt, actually, because I thought it was due to me, because you just can't believe the weather could do such a bad thing to you. And then I found out this has obviously happened to hundreds of horticulturists all around the country, and people had lost millions of pounds. So this is why we're all going to starve, is because, it's not like, oh, we've lost that crop, so we'll stick another one in. No. That's it for 12 months. Life and death is a binary. So it's distinctly non-linear in the sense that you're okay, and then you're dead, and then you never come back. But we sort of don't really get that in terms of food supply. If you're a grower, then you've got to plant the seed, and then got the seedlings, and they might get eaten or, die in bad weather. And then you've got to crop the crop. So there's all these hoops, and if during any of those hoops you fail, then the whole thing is gone, and then you can't plant again because it's too late. So this is basically how mass starvation is going to happen. Is you'll get a critical mass of producers around the world that have the same problem. And then people will be ringing them up going, can't you supply more bread? And say, no, because we've got to wait till next year now to plant the wheat. And they'll go, oh, I thought you could just get it off the shelf like everything else. Our very success is going to lead to the extremity of our failure. And the success is to create a complex system. The thing about a complex system is that you don't know when the crisis is coming until it hits you, and then it's so big that the whole thing collapses in one go. Although it sounds like apocalyptic science fiction, there's good mathematical reasons for thinking that everything's going to be fine and then everything's going to be unbelievably bad. People tend to put it in terms of the Arctic or whatever. What we need to think about is social collapse and fascism. Those are the handmaidens towards extinction. A nice storyline is, you know, happy-go-lucky farmer got fucked over by climate change, decides to take the system down. I mean, that sounds great, it's a nice storyline, but that, to be honest with you, that's not what it was. It was already there. I knew this is where I was going to end up. I had to go through this, you know, 5-year process of extracting my ego out of thinking, one, I'm just a nice, regular father, married man type thing, and secondly, I'm a businessman and, you know, that's what I do. And you see this all the time, don't you? You have these set roles and people say, no, I'm a parent, I can't do it. No, I'm a filmmaker, I can't do it. Do you know what I mean?
This is completely abnormal. I mean, I get involved with, you know, Parent-Teachers Association and things like that, but I don't do anything like this. It draws you in and it opens up a whole new perspective that you had no idea that you would ever see. Why not me, you know? That I do say, you know, well, why not? Why shouldn't I? I've led a charmed life. You know, I've been born in Great Britain at a time of great prosperity. You know, I was educated, I've had a very good professional life. I've had all of the benefits. I've been oblivious, and now I've woken up. Well, the trigger for the activism was the IPCC report.
It is best to put this tonight in the stark and simple terms used by the scientist who produced today's devastating UN-backed report on global climate change. We have just 12 years to save the planet. Yes, you heard that right. 12 years to halt the seemingly inexorable slide towards global catastrophe.
Yeah, I can remember reading it and thinking, Jesus, 12 years? That's ridiculous. That can't possibly be that quick. Up until that point, I'd kind of assumed that everything was going all right, you know, maybe we could do better. But I was too wrapped up in my own life to be paying that much attention. And after that, I got really depressed for about 2 months. And I really only came out of that depression when I made up my mind that some things were going to change.
What I wanted to do was like do what my passion is, which is how to radically change society. So what I did is went to the fossil fuel group at King's College, you know, and it's like divest from fossil fuels, all very worthy and what have you. But they're following this script, you know, which is get on the committees, do a petition, have a debate, all this sort of worthy stuff. And it goes nowhere. So you go to King's College and you say, look, we want divestment and we want it now, and if you don't give it us, then we're going to paint your walls. The name of the game on winding people up is you've got to wind them up, but not too much.
No, you haven't. Hello. Hello. My name's Adam Loxley. I'm the security manager here. I understand that one of the postgraduate students here, and you're obviously concerned about climate change, etc. Yeah? I've noticed that there's graffiti on the columns and walls that we've got here. Who's responsible for that? Guys?
Yes, I saw him.
Who did you see do it?
Yeah, he was spraying it.
This man here?
No, we don't want that.
He did.
You don't need to do this. Well, you protest.
I'm from King's College, Climate Emergency. This college has been investing in oil and gas for 30 years.
Yeah, I disagree with that as well.
30 years. It's still refusing to divest from fossil fuels after 30 years. We're protesting and we're going to make a change to this policy.
We spray chalked, we started spray chalking. So this activist said, I was going to put some of my kiddies' chalk on the wall just as a little wind-up. And this activist person said, no, you want to use like spray chalk, which is like the nuclear option on chalk, so...
King's College. Can I see your identity, please? Well, no, it's not a public area. It's King's College. I'm asking you to leave. It's not a public area. So get out, please.
Within 5 minutes, the vice principal was down, who completely ignored all our letters. And one of the best bits of my research was when he said, this is terrible, this is terrible. All this is going to do is shut down the conversation. And then, of course, the great line is, well, this is the first time we've actually talked, this conversation now, boom. So it was done and dusted as far as they were concerned. They ticked a little box in terms of being environmental, and that was it. The demand was that King's College would totally divest from fossil fuels. You go to an institution, they say, that's a great idea, Roger, but we've got our processes. We've made our plan, and that's what we're going to stick to. But what you're not to realise is that's a social construction, right? It's not a law of physics. Once you spray chalked the hall, the social context changed. And they went into emergency mode, and surprise, surprise, they had an emergency finance meeting. It is possible. I'd worked out my escalation. In January, I was going to do the front, and then if I could get enough people, we'd go and do the central hall. And then I knew I was going to go on hunger strike. I was scared about it, obviously. But I thought, okay, keep with the plan. So a week later, I just march in and say, if you don't sign the bit of paper saying you're divesting from fossil fuels, then I'm going to go on hunger strike tomorrow. Yeah, I was sitting outside the front of King's every day with my Old Testament sort of routine, in my hunger strike, day 6, day 7. And these students would be going by and, they'd sort of ignore it for you to say, what, you're still on hunger strike? So after 14 days, phew, he signed the bit of paper, because after about day 11, it gets quite tricky. We'd effectively won. They knew they'd lost, because a group of people had stood up for what was right. There was no way out. There would be a PR disaster for them to resist it. Basically, this is the prototype of how to save the world. The code was prototyped at King's College. Disruption, disruption, disruption. Sacrifice, sacrifice. Respect, respect to the opposition. Win. Keep going. Repeat. Expand. That's it.
And all of the pieces were dropping into place. At that point, I really engaged with things that I'd never conceived of before. So I did Veganuary. The idea that you'd cut back on meat, that was anathema to me. I like my meat, you know? I don't have a problem with the idea of farming animals. But the idea that animals take up such a vast part of the Earth's resources, purely and simply because it's much easier to cook a bit of meat than it is to go away and cook some vegetables. There's no sacrifice involved in that. You know, it's merely a case of just changing direction. As a society, we are being brainwashed to not care about the future, to not consider any of the consequences of our actions, to not think about what goes on beyond our immediate little world. We're all rushing around earning loads of money in order to buy loads of stuff and go on these exotic holidays because our lives are so empty. And suddenly, here was this movement that was saying, this system, not only does it make us unhappy, but it's actually killing us.
The truly horrific thing about the climate catastrophe is you don't need to do anything for it to happen. Like with nuclear war, you actually have to press the button. You have to do something. Well, with this, it's like business as usual equals extinction. It's like climbing up this massive hill to get people into another paradigm. Well, you start by saying it. Extinction. You know, because before Extinction Rebellion, no one talked about extinction, did they? The power of extinction is its finality. Deep down, it's pressing that death button. It's reminding people of death. And now, what's happened with the climate crisis is death is coming towards us. It is the social equivalent of being told you've got cancer, except it's happening to the whole society. I'm not trying to convince you of this. If you don't understand what's happening, I'm not going to try and persuade you. It's not a message, right? Death is not a message. It's a reality. So you just got to be who you are and say the truth. And it is possible for miracles to happen through your awareness of death. And that awareness of death comes in a non-linear way. You think you're fine, and then a tragedy happens, and that jolts you. It jolts you into a different area of existence. And through that, you become aware of a deeper sense of responsibility towards yourself and to the world. And if a critical mass of people do that, then you get what might be called a great awakening.
Protesters wanting the government to take urgent action on climate change have descended on the capital. They have smashed windows at the Shell headquarters near Waterloo, painted their messages on the streets and blocked key roads.
They've also blocked Oxford Circus with a pink boat with "Tell the Truth" written on the side as part of what they're calling their full scale of creative resistance. They say that they want to cause traffic chaos and disruption. They're achieving that.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt that a lot of disruption has been caused. I'm outside the Shell HQ just by the London Eye, and as you can see, protesters have managed somehow to get up on the side of the building.
The whole sort of proposition of mass civil disobedience is to create the crisis before the crisis arrives. Because once the crisis arrives, you're already gone off the cliff. That's the crisis, right? So you have to cause disruption to people's lives. What disruption does is it gets attention. Nothing's going to change without attention. The second thing about disruption is it costs money, costs reputational damage to the opponent. What's a lot more difficult for people in this culture, I think, is to understand sacrifice. People that do civil disobedience are putting themselves in harm's way. When you put yourself in harm's way, people are interested in that because you're not fearful. And one of the biggest experiences of life is dealing with your own fears. So you're immediately attracted, whether you agree with them or not, you're immediately attracted to watching people that don't have fear. And then cognitively what happens is you think, well, why have they done that? Well, because they're worried about climate change. And then the next cognitive step is, well, maybe it's real then.
Climate justice! When do we want it? Now!
You just need a small nucleus of people who are prepared to create civil disobedience. And it isn't just about Extinction Rebellion. It's about all the types of injustice that are happening, because they're all part and parcel of the same system that is holding us locked into this passive oppression.
The 1% of people that are going to push that new paradigm, they're the people who aren't primarily interested in the level of carbon emissions. They're not even primarily interested in politics. What they're interested in is becoming whole. It's not that hope doesn't encourage action, but it also paradoxically discourages action. I'm in hope, and therefore I won't act because I'll hope that it's going to be okay. But there's another logic, which is there's no hope, so I've got nothing to lose. And if I've got nothing to lose, I'm going to resist. And it's not bad, because people will, in a subliminal way, want it to happen. If you're doing a bad thing, part of you wants someone to stop it. I mean, I've had hundreds, literally hundreds of conversations with people where people have said the same thing, right? I knew, and now I'm going to do something. What we should be starting with is not the climate crisis, but our personal spiritual crisis. It's actually quite nice on Saturday night to sit down with a glass of wine and watch a video with your family. Do you know what I mean? That's fun, you know, there's no point denying it. It's nice to sort of eat loads of food and go on holiday. But there's another logic. You can't actually be happy after a certain point unless you go into some sort of service to something other than material satisfaction. If you keep going towards material paradise, you'll end up in material hell. You've been here 1,000 times before. Instead of people thinking, oh my God, this is like something new and terrible. No, 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 this is the stuff of every archetypical life. The central story of humankind is you're born, you realise you're fucked, you do something about it, and then you die. There's a phenomenon here which we've ignored and forgotten and has been central to human societies for millennia, which is that life is suffering, and through that suffering you become whole. And wholeness is a more profound and organic concept than something as shallow as happiness. The tragedy of life is the means through which you become whole and be who you are. So it's an aid. It's basically, that's the thing that enables you to transition towards accepting your death. This is an ancient story of corruption and then renewal. And what we've got now is like the mother of all archetypes. It's the final reckoning.
It just felt as if they were being manipulated by a political agenda that said, we want these people stopped at all costs. I don't care if they're telling the truth. I don't care if they're conscientious protectors. I don't care if the science backs their argument. I just want them stopped.
The essence of what is human is the ability to make a decision, a conscious decision on what is right in life, regardless of the consequences. People think it's really miserable, but there's ecstasy about it, which is in the face of all this like pressure to conform and to go with the herd and to destroy and to annihilate, a person stands up and goes, no, you know, and that's the glory of it. What you have to get into is what it means to be who I am. That's the central question of life. Sacrifice is the mechanism through which you become more happy, but not because you're trying to be more happy, but because you want to be who you are. If you want to be really great, you've got to lose yourself. That's a central paradox. So going to prison, yes, you're losing yourself. Prison is the manifestation of my humanness. I am who I am, and this is what I believe, and we all know it's right, and you can do what you like, but I'm standing by my principles. That brings down empires. That's the fundamental spiritual material of every revolt and revolution. It's not primarily political, but obviously it fuses with the rage against injustice, fuses against the prospect of mass death. You get those two things together, and that's like, you get the dynamite. For a proportion of the population, this is going to be heaven. It's because it's real, it's exciting. There's a whole cluster of different emotional reactions which are extremely powerful and positive and even ecstatic, because suddenly the real comes into the unreal, which is one of the most, fantastic things about life, isn't it? Everything's like bollocks, and then someone says the truth, and you're just like, yes! Fundamentally, you know where it's at. You've got this new map of reality, which is death's on the way, I'm pretty insignificant, I'm going to live a good life, and a good life in the context of the coming genocide of the next generation is to resist it with whatever breath and moment you've got. And that brings us back to the joy of resistance. All this misery around activism, it's not, right? Once you've made this transition, it's like an act of service, it's an act of joy, it's an act of being who you are at last. This was the biggest organised act of civil disobedience in British history. What April did was show that mass disruption and mass sacrifice brings home the goods. For the first time in decades, a political protest brings the centre of London to a halt 10 days running. For the first time since the suffragettes, thousands of people put themselves into a position of breaking the law. People know it's real through the actuality of the struggle on the streets. And that's a central function of Extinction Rebellion. So what's happened is everyone sort of acknowledged it's real in the political sphere. Okay, so we declared climate emergency, that makes us feel better, and now we don't need to do anything. It's like the alcoholic. The alcoholic has been forced to sit down and admit they've got a drink problem. But as everyone knows who deals with alcoholics, admitting you've got a drink problem is a million miles away from doing anything about it. In a war, everyone knows what it's about. You're out to kill as many as possible of the other side, as fast as possible, faster than they're going to kill you, and whoever does it best wins. Well, the non-violent version of that is we're closing down the economy as fast as we can. And when that level of social disruption is happening, or the prospect of it is happening, and it's real, that's when you're going to get policy change. You don't want to disrupt the economic basis of society without a good excuse. Well, as it happens, we have the best excuse in the history of humanity.
I can see how powerful blocking roads is, but you need to be able to go in other ways.
We need to look for ways in which to efficiently close down the economy. And the aviation industry is the prime target because it's so closely controlled, and if you disrupt it, it all has to shut down. What we're trying to create in Heathrow is an artificial version of what we're going to face with the climate crisis. When the natural event happens, then, very arguably and almost inevitably, it's going to be too late. This is the central point of what we're trying to do here, is to create the shock now so that we can respond rather than have the inevitable natural shock later when it'll be too late.
The level of disruption, even by shutting down Heathrow for a best part of a week, is trivial compared to the disruption that may ensue when we're seeing not just a few thousand refugees a year, but thousands of refugees every day. We're talking about a planet where vast amounts of currently inhabited land will be uninhabitable. People are going to be displaced. They will cause a refugee crisis like nothing we've ever experienced. That's going to cause tensions within our society that will inevitably lead to violence, because that's what happens when people starve, when people are frightened, when people have nowhere to go.
So once you see it in that frame, then you can sort of understand that Heathrow is totally justified. Well, if you just see it in a little, people go on their holiday frame, it's like, how outrageous.
Environmental activists are planning to fly drones in Heathrow Airport's exclusion zone later this week in an attempt to shut it down. The Heathrow Pause group have said they will operate a small toy drone from 3 a.m. on Friday to put pressure on the government to take tougher steps to reduce carbon emissions. Today, the airport warned that anyone operating a drone in the exclusion zone will be subject to the full force of the law.
I am now an experienced person on the run. I am in a safe house. I've got a disguise. Last night, I slept in a car with blacked out windows. I had made arrangements that I was going to come up to London early because my slot for flying a drone isn't until Sunday. And so I intended to come up so that I was available to do any press calls that were needed, because I've discovered that I can talk. This action that we are undertaking has been designed to be safe, 100% safe. We're flying, as you mentioned, toy drones at head height. I don't want to disrupt people. I don't want to upset them. But it's disruption that the government actually listens to. Action is what is needed. And if this is the only way that we can achieve that action, then so be it. Oh, I'm trying to get the drone ready to fly. I need to check that I've got all the batteries. I can use my arrest to get media attention for this. Oh, I seem to be switched on. I have a voice, and I want to use that voice. A year ago, I was a really tired old lady. Now, I am full of passion, energy, fire. So I'm more determined than ever. However I get arrested, it has got to count. And I am perfectly ready. If they want to send me to prison, okay, fine. But I will go out with a song in my heart saying, listen, please. Damn, I've lost a leg. I've lost 3 legs.
So what are you going to do now?
I'm going to ring the police. Hello, this is Sylvia Dell. I'm ringing in to let you know that I'm, I think it's called Plimsoll Park or Plimsoll Farm in Useley, and I am flying a drone. And would you like to come and arrest me? Because that would be quite convenient right now. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Cheers. Bye. I do this because my young children, their lives are going to be devastated by this. In the future, when I'm not around anymore, they are going to be paying the price for the life that I've led, and I can't live with that. This is about my moral obligation to those who come after me. They're the ones who've really opened my heart. You know, I want them to be able to look back on me and think that Mum did the best she could. I don't want them to look back and think that I lived a frivolous life and then just abandoned them. I want them to know that I did everything I possibly could. I can stand being locked up. I can stand the prospect of going to prison for however long, because it's towards the end of my life. I've had so much. Why shouldn't I pay a price?
If we could have arrestables sat in the road, that would be fantastic. Any arrestables?
That's what civil disobedience is all about. Drawing out the violence of the system upon oneself. It's a sacrificial act. And it's not a conventional, materialistic, don't get yourself into trouble, mate, act, right? Anyone who's watching this thinks this is weird, then wake up to what Western culture is based upon. That Christian tradition, which is sometimes people are called upon to sacrifice themselves for the greater good. I don't think what I'm saying here is some sort of weird thing. What's weird is the culture that thinks it's weird. If you think this is weird, then you've cut yourself off from history, and history is coming back. And that's translating into ordinary people stepping forward to put themselves in harm's way to protect their children and grandchildren. That's it. It's new. It hasn't happened before. You know, not since the Second World War. Don't think this is climate change activism. You know, that's not what it's about. It's about people scrambling to save what they love the most. You can describe democracy as a technical set of arrangements, but there's another definition of democracy, which is popular empowerment in the collective decisions of society. And technically we're a democracy, but as we all know, there's massive disillusionment with how it feels. This mass disillusionment can be transformed into mass empowerment through the ecstasy of rebellion. Suddenly, loads of people feel empowered to actually make their mark on history. It's possible to institutionalize that through revigorated democratic deliberation. And historically, the best way of doing that is through assemblies of ordinary people. It's possible to come out with something significantly better in terms of democratic governance than what we've got at the moment. And most significantly, something that can successfully deliberate and legislate on the transformation of the global economy. And without that, it's game over.
In dangerous times, hold fast to courage. In dangerous times, hold fast to love. In dangerous times, hold fast to courage.
During this journey, I've discovered depths of strength in me that I had no idea existed. By living this business as usual life, we are missing so much of who we really are. And once you take that oppression off, It's like having a wet blanket removed from your shoulders. You suddenly go, oh, that's good. I feel really good now. You suddenly discover that there's all this common ground. Yeah, I have complete strangers who come up to me now and thank me for what I am doing. And all they see is that. And they go, oh, you're welcome, you know?
The opportunity is a chance to live life to the full. And living life to the full means living without lies. And the biggest lie of our society is everything's fine and the climate catastrophe isn't going to happen. Well, once you've got rid of that lie, it doesn't just enable a technical solution, it enables a mass social revival, spiritual revival of what it means to be human. Because then suddenly we've got this massive collective project called Let's Try and Survive. And what do humans like more than anything else is a massive collective moral project that brings everyone together in community.